Hi, I'm Matt York, publisher and CEO of Videomaker. Thank you for taking the time to watch this exciting training, Deconstructing Cinematography. This series takes well-known movie scenes from Citizen Kane, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Barry Lyndon, The Godfather, Saving Private Ryan, and Star Trek, and explores what makes these iconic scenes so great. Understanding how composition, lighting, and different shooting techniques work together can really help beginning producers improve their skills.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Adam. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography and then break them down to find out why exactly they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from an all-time classic, Citizen Kane. It was released in 1941 and nominated for Best Cinematography. Now many of the techniques used in the film proved to be groundbreaking changes in the way movies are made.
In this scene, the reporter Jerry Thompson attempts to interview Susan Alexander. Let's take a look.
Miss Alexander. This is Mr. Thompson, Miss Alexander.
I want another drink, John.
Right away. Will you have something, Mr. Thompson? I'll have a highball, please.
Who told you could sit down?
I thought maybe we could have a talk together.
Well, think again. Let you people leave me alone. I'm minding my own business, you mind yours.
If I could just have a little talk with you, Miss Alexander, I'd
Get out of here. Get out!
Sorry.
Get out.
Maybe some other time.
Get out.
Gino. Get her another highball. She just won't talk to nobody, Mr. Thompson.
Okay.
Another double?
Yeah.
Hello, I want New York City. Cortland, 79970. This is Atlantic City, 46827. All right. Hey.
Yeah. She'll snap out of it. Why, until he died, she'd just as soon talk about Mr. Kane as about anything.
Hello?
Sooner.
Mrs. Thompson, let me talk to the chief, will you? Hello, Mr. Ralston? She won't talk. The second Mrs. Kane, about Rosebud or anything else. I'm calling from Atlantic City. Then tomorrow, I'm going over to Philadelphia to the Thatcher Library to see that private diary of his. Yeah, they're expecting me. Then I've got an appointment in New York with Kane's general manager. What's his name? Bernstein. Then I'm coming back here. Yeah, I'll see everybody that's still alive. Goodbye, Mr. Ralston.
Well, that was a great scene. So, Adam, what did you think about that?
Well, the first thing, it's just amazing the way that it starts out with that shot with the camera just moving right through the sign and then in through the glass. I mean, that had really not been done before. That was something brand new that nobody had seen. And it's amazing how seamlessly they did the transition through the glass into the room. It starts out high, it goes nice and low, brings the characters into view. Just a really nice opening scene.
Yeah, it's really amazing when you think about it, because back then, almost everybody just put the camera right in the middle of the set, you know, and had a wide shot, basically like you would have in a theatrical drama, and then let the actors go at it until they basically got tired or the lights got too hot, and then they would cut and do another scene that was a wide shot. So it's amazing that they would actually use different cuts like that, and especially all that motion that they had in there, to add more drama and meaning to those scenes.
Another interesting thing is the way that almost all the shots are completely in focus. This director really tended to like to use really high f-stops, f8 to f16, somewhere in there, whereas everybody else was using something between, say, f2.5 to 3.2, something like that. So it's interesting. He uses a lot of really drastic lighting changes in order to draw your eye to what he wants you to look at. Like in the scene where the reporter's in the telephone booth and the lady is over at the table there, your eye is immediately drawn to her. And you're sort of, looking at her, seeing what she's struggling with, and then looking at the reporter who's kind of in the shadows and just kind of mysterious. And,
Right.
It sort of makes you ponder the scene a little bit more.
Exactly. I mean, and at F8, when you have your entire scene in focus, how else are you supposed to draw somebody's attention to something unless you use lighting? That's all you got left.
There's no depth of field. So
yeah, and that's something that Greg
Toland
Toland really wanted to get, actually, is that deep focus, because he really felt that in real life, you don't have this shallow focus going on, and you see everything, and you get to choose what you want to look at.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so basically, he wanted to emulate that in his movies. The only thing was, you still want people to look at certain things in the movie, right? So obviously, by the use of lighting, they were still able to achieve that when she had all that light on her, which again, at F8, she must have been burning up over there.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of light they needed back then, little incandescent lights.
It was probably terrible.
Yeah, it probably was. I'm sure she was sweating over there. But nonetheless, though, he did a great job of, putting her in focus by putting the light on her and keeping the reporter out of focus, which actually made him sort of feel like he was doing something he wasn't supposed to because he's in the dark, you know what I'm saying?
Kind of hiding back there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And, another cool thing is the way that when the camera comes down in that opening scene, you actually can see the ceiling there.
Yeah.
And in a couple of the other shots, which is also something that was a big, it was not allowed because there was no ceiling usually. Usually you had all your lights and rigging up there, but they actually used muslin ceilings that were painted, and then they would have the microphones and everything above that, and so they were able to mic the scene. And that was another thing that had never been done before.
Yeah, I mean, up until then, obviously all the light gear and stuff like that would be up there, and so you wouldn't want to see that. Otherwise, people would be like totally out of the movie, thinking, "Oh, I see the lights now. This is totally a movie experience now instead of like something I can really get myself into."
Exactly.
Well, the other thing too to add to that is that Citizen Kane was done by Orson Welles, right?
Right.
And Orson Welles comes from a radio background, so it's really quite amazing that a guy who comes from a radio background like he did could do something so technically amazing at the time that he did with the camera work. It really speaks to Greg Toland, his cinematographer, that he was able to do all this stuff, get away with it, and make it look amazing.
Broke a lot of rules, but it was good that he did.
Now we could talk forever about Citizen Kane, but unfortunately the kicker behind me is about to set my hair on fire. So in our next segment, we'll be watching a great chase scene from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Groundbreaking cinematographer Conrad Hall won the Academy Award for the film and used some solid techniques to achieve his artistic vision.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Dan.
And I'm Adam. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography, and then break them down to find out why exactly they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from a great film that boldly pushed the boundaries of the Western genre, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Released in 1969, Conrad Hall won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography, and his style still has enormous influence in movies today.
In this scene, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, played by Paul Newman and Robert Redford, attempt to escape from a posse after robbing a train.
Whatever they're selling, I don't want it. Will you leave it? Come on! Yeah! Hey, Butch! What? They're very good. Split up.
That was a great scene. So, Adam, what kind of stood out to you in that scene?
Well, one thing that caught my eye is near the beginning when the camera panned quickly, I saw a lens flare that kind of stood out.
Yeah.
And that was something that you just didn't do in that time period in cinematography. That was really considered more of a mistake.
Right.
But Comrade Hall was kind of known for taking those things like dirt hitting the camera, lens flares, and turning it into something that he wanted to do artistically, and really stood on the fact that it wasn't a mistake, it was intentional.
Yeah, and you see that all the time now, where you see lens flares in movies.
Sure.
You even see a lot in like title designs and stuff like that, because it looks natural, and everyone like understands the fact that there will be lens flares naturally in a camera. I mean, if you've shot with a camera before,
Right.
a lot of people have with their little handy cams at home. Sometimes you get lens flares, and that's not always a mistake. Sometimes those lens flares kind of look cool because they add to the scene.
Absolutely.
It makes it feel more natural. It's something that can make something be more, I guess, focused on. Like if you have a lens flare over top of an element you want people to look at, that's one way to get them to focus on something beyond just, shallow depth of field or lighting. You can use lens flares too.
Yeah, it's a great way to draw attention to something. Another interesting artistic choice was the way that he depicted the posse. By using really long lenses, you never really could see the faces on the posse, and you never really could see exactly who they were. It was sort of like he was making the posse more of an idea rather than individual people.
Right, and if you notice, there's times where he actually, had a really low angle so you couldn't see them when it was kind of more of a close-up, so that way you still couldn't see their face. And then, of course, sometimes he even had them in the shadow a little bit, so he used lighting to kind of hide that, posse's face, which, again, made them feel like less of a person or less of a personality and more of that technology that was supposed to be progressing on them. And that's what the movie was basically about.
And visually, throughout this movie, he did a lot of things like that. He overexposed the scenes so that the sky would look more washed out. He didn't like the blues. He didn't like the deep blues, and he wanted it to look more washed out and dirty and just more real.
Yeah, and basically by doing that too, you don't have to worry about matching the cameras so much, because if one camera, like camera 1, had a blue sky that looked kind of more like a navy blue, and the other camera 2, had more of like a sky blue, whatever you'd see naturally. Yeah, you don't want to intercut those, because sometimes that blue would look different and it would kind of distract from the overall story.
Right, so by overexposing, you eliminate those dissimilarities, and then you're allowed to seamlessly cut things together.
Something that people with cameras nowadays that don't always take the best, photographs or the best video can actually probably use themselves, right?
Absolutely.
This is a great movie with tons of great scenes, but unfortunately Adam and I are due for a duel at high noon. So, in our next segment, we'll be watching a scene from the Stanley Kubrick film, Barry Lyndon.
With the help of cinematographer John Alcott, this film took low-light shooting to the extreme to capture the authentic look and feel of the 1700s.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Dan.
And I'm Adam. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography, and then break them down to find out why exactly they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to look at a scene from an innovative film that took low-light shooting to new depths. Barry Lyndon, released in 1975, still holds the title for the lowest f-stop lens used in a film. With the beautifully crafted shots in the film, it's no surprise that John Alcott won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography.
In this scene, Barry and Captain Grogan carry on an intimate conversation lit only by candlelight.
Is Miss Brady well?
There are only 6 Miss Bradys now.
Has something happened to Nora?
She took on so about your going away that she was obliged to console herself with a husband. She is now Mrs. John Quinn.
Mrs. John Quinn? Was there another John Quinn?
No, the very same one, my boy. He recovered from his wound. The shot you hit him with was not likely to hurt him, for it was only made of tow.
Tow?
Do you think the Bradys would let you kill $1,500 a year out of the family? The plan of the duel was all arranged in order to get you out of the way, for the cowardly Quinn could never be brought to marry from fear of you. But hit him you certainly did, my lad, with a fine, thick plugget of tow. The fellow was so frightened that he was an hour in coming to.
Well, that was really interesting. So what struck you about that scene, Adam?
Well, John Alcott really set the mood there. I mean, what spectacular lighting. And it's all lit with candles.
I know, right?
It's amazing. They actually had to use lenses that they modified that they got from NASA that were used for the Apollo moon landings. And believe it or not, you're actually seeing an f-stop of 0.7, the lowest ever recorded in film. And it's just amazing watching, as they speak, you can actually see the candles flicker and the light changes, and it just really sets the mood for the shot.
There was a part where he basically said the letter QU. He's like that, and you could see the candle flicker,
just go, zoom.
And it literally made a difference to his face because he was lit all by candles, which in most movies, because they're not lit by candles, they actually have another light off to the side.
Right.
You don't see that happen. You see that flicker of the candle, but it really doesn't translate to the face.
Right, and that's another thing. I mean, in this whole film, back in this time period, there was no light bulbs or anything like that. So they wanted to make sure the lighting looked as natural as possible. I mean, hence the candlelight.
Right.
And even if they did use lights, they wanted it to look as much either like candlelight or natural sunlight to help fill out the scene.
And I'm sure that felt really nice for the actors, not having that heat on their face from those lights, of course.
I'm sure. But it was probably a nice change.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at even today's technology, we really don't even have lenses that are f.7.
No.
I mean, f.9 is about the best you can get. Even then, that's an expensive lens.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have DSLRs, which you can get to about f1.2 with like the 50mm lens, but even with that, if you're going to light by candlelight, it's literally going to cost you the fact that you have to have a bunch of grain in the scene by jacking up your ISO.
Right, it's not going to look nearly as good, but I wouldn't even want to shoot at f.7. I mean, how would you keep it in focus? As a matter of fact, in this film, in order to make sure that the actors were in focus, because with the lenses they couldn't really tell with the camera, they actually had a video camera that was 90 degrees off of the cinema camera. And then they had a monitor, and they actually marked lines on the monitor that showed where the shot was in focus and out of focus.
So the actors could stay right where they're supposed to be,
Exactly. So if the actor was beyond the line or behind the line, then they knew right away they're not going to be in focus, and we're going to have to redo this.
Well, you pretty much have to at f.7, obviously. I mean, I've shot with f1.2 lenses. And
that's very shallow.
Yeah, I've shot somebody dancing back and forth, and every time they dance one way, they're out of focus, I got to refocus, then they come back, I got to refocus again. And that's just an area of about like a couple of feet. I can't imagine something like an f.7.
Yeah, and if you look at the shot too, you see that only a very small portion of the actor is in focus. I mean, maybe his eyes and maybe a little bit of his face, but even his jacket down here is going to be out of focus.
Because of the distance, right?
Right.
Yeah, which is amazing that they actually got as much focus as they did out of those f.7 lenses. I would imagine that would be really tough to do.
Truly an amazing scene.
Now, you might be willing to sit through the full 187 minutes of Barry Lyndon, but I'm sure you're sick of hearing us talk by now. So, in our next segment, we'll check out a scene you can't refuse in The Godfather.
Gordon Willis helped shape the incredible look and feel of this film with some really astonishing cinematography.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Dan.
And I'm Adam. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography, and then break them down to find out why exactly they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from Hollywood's first blockbuster, The Godfather. Released in 1972, this film redefined the gangster genre and won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Cinematographer Gordon Willis masterfully crafted shadows throughout the entire film to create some truly intense scenes.
In the opening scene of the film, The Undertaker pleads with Marlon Brando for a favor on the day of his daughter's wedding.
I believe in America. America has made my fortune. And I raised my daughter in the American fashion. I gave her freedom, but I taught her never to dishonor her family. She found a boyfriend, not an Italian. She went to the movies with him. She stayed out late. I didn't protest. 2 months ago, he took her for a drive with another boyfriend. They made her drink whiskey, and then they tried to take advantage of her. She resisted. She kept her honor. So they beat her like an animal. When I went to the hospital, her nose was broken. Her jaw was shattered, held together by wire. She couldn't even weep because of the pain. But I wept Why did I weep? She was the light of my life. Beautiful girl. Now she will never be beautiful again. Sorry.
Well, that was a great scene. What did you take away from that, Adam?
Well, the first thing was the very deliberate camera movement. I mean, it starts out zoomed in on The Undertaker, and it zooms out so slowly.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It turns out that actually is one of, if not the very first computer-controlled zoom used in a film.
What's even more incredible is that even with today's technology, we have zooms that don't even work that slow. So I mean, they must have had some really fine-tooth cog there that was running that thing in order to be that precise.
Yeah, it would have had to have been something engineered very well in order to work. I mean, it almost looked like a dolly shot, the way it moved so slow. You didn't even notice any field of view change or anything that usually happens on a zoom.
Yeah.
It just was very slow and deliberate, and it worked perfectly.
And I think the reason why it was so slow and deliberate was because the director really wanted you to feel like you didn't really know who this person was. Right away we could see The Undertaker and we knew who he was, but you couldn't really see who he was talking to. It wasn't until I don't know, probably like a couple of minutes into that scene that suddenly you saw, oh, there's this guy he's talking to and he's in the shadows, which makes him seem very ominous.
I think it also, in a way, lets you sort of become Marlon Brando's character and sort of hear this Undertaker pleading his case to you, the way that you're sitting there and you're just listening to him talk.
Right.
And it really let you relate to his situation, and sort of take in everything that he's talking about.
Right, the fact that the scene's so long and that you just see the guy, just himself, just the Undertaker for
All
a
by
long time,
himself.
it really makes it seem like, yeah, you're talking to him and you got to let him say his entire piece before you get to see who it is that's listening, basically.
Yeah. In addition to that, the lighting really made a big impact on how sort of mysterious the whole scene was.
Definitely, yeah.
The way that it was lit, the way that their eyes were shadowed, the way that the room, you could see some detail outside of the characters, but really the lighting was more focused on the characters.
But what's interesting about that is the fact that you could still see some details in those shadows.
True.
In real life, if you lit somebody that harsh and they had kind of the raccoon eyes going on, you wouldn't be able to see anything within their eyes. But in this film, though, they actually did light those shadows a little bit, just so that you could at least see that detail in the shadows. But still, it looked like it was a shadow, which is what they wanted to achieve.
I think the other reason the director decided to use shadows the way he did was it hides the character's intent. I mean, typically when you watch a film, you look at a person's eyes and you really know what they're thinking. In this, because of the way that they're lit, you really don't know what they're thinking. It makes it a lot more mysterious, and then you really have to wait till the character speaks before you know what's on their mind.
Right, I mean, typically that's the number one thing you don't do. You try to always light the eyes so you can see what the person's emotions are. Without the eyes, there's basically no emotions. I mean, the eyes are the windows to a person's soul, right? So you need those eyes typically. But in this film, they went the other way, and it actually worked out pretty well for their theme.
No, it works great. The color was interesting too.
Yeah.
It was a little warmer than you'd typically expect to see. It kind of gave it sort of an old-aged look to it that
Right.
I thought was really appropriate for the content.
Yeah, I mean, apparently they used 2900 degrees Kelvin lights rather than 3200 degrees Kelvin, which
little
ends
warmer.
up making everything look a little more orange, a little more yellow. And I think you're right. That speaks to the age of this entire piece. Because it's a period piece, they wanted it to look sort of like aged film a little bit in that sense, where you see a little bit more of the yellows instead of the blues and the violet range and stuff like that.
And it turns out that actually sort of became a trend, that when you were doing a period piece or you were trying to establish that something took place a long time ago, that was a really popular way to do it, and this film helped push that forward.
Yeah, it really wasn't done before this film.
No.
We'd love to talk more about The Godfather, but Adam and I are due for our union break. So, in our next segment, we'll check out an unforgettable scene from Saving Private Ryan.
Steven Spielberg and his go-to cinematographer, Janusz Kaminski, used some amazing techniques to bring a raw, gritty war film to life.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Dan.
And I'm Adam. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography, and then break them down to find out why exactly they're so highly revered.
We're going to take a look at a scene from an epic war film, Saving Private Ryan. Released in 1998, this film is known for its realistic portrayal of war. Janusz Kaminski won the Academy Award for his gritty, intense cinematography that has some of the most memorable battle scenes ever shot on film.
In this scene, we'll see part of the 27-minute opening battle that graphically depicts the assault on Omaha Beach.
Wow, so what did you think of that scene, Adam?
Well, it's a really intense scene. I was finding it hard to even concentrate on the actual deconstruction of the scene just because I was so involved with what was going on. There's so many things that are happening there that make it such a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, one of the things that really makes it a great scene is that they do a lot of shaky camera movements. You probably noticed that. I mean, before this, they didn't do a lot of shaky camera movements, especially not as many as they were doing. But the reason they did that was they were trying to mimic the way that, you know, a soldier on the ground filming this, you know, what his shot would actually look like. It would be very shaky, very chaotic, you know. And not only that, but you probably noticed a few times that they actually, you know, kept elements on the camera lens that probably shouldn't have actually been there, like dirt and blood and water. Because, you know, in real life, there's no way you'd actually be able to wipe off that in the middle of, you know, getting showered by bullets, right?
No, not in the middle of that. And another thing was the explosions, the way that the explosions looked, how you could see every particle of dirt as it exploded up. They did that actually by using a 45 or 90 degree shutter angle on the camera, as opposed to, usually it's like 180 degrees. And that provides a pretty smooth look, which when those explosions happened, it wouldn't look that good. Being able to see every granule of the explosion, I think, really makes it a lot more dramatic.
Yeah, typically it's there's a lot more motion blur to it. So you see all this kind of blur behind it, but because you could see every you know, frame that was in there, it ended up making it look a little bit more stroby, and that made it almost look, again, more surreal. And the whole idea of this scene, it feels like, is to be surreal. You know, it's one of those things where you jump off of, you know, this boat into this war zone, and you're just hit with this chaotic craziness, and you don't know what's going on. You know, and that's why they edited these scenes so fast. They also, you know, like edited every one of these, you know, scenes with probably only about 2 seconds for every shot. You know, I don't know if any shot lasts more than 2 seconds.
Very fast paced. And then just the way that the color looked, the sort of bleached color, and it just made it feel sort of lifeless, and it looked old, and it matched the time period. It made it look like film that, you know, that probably came from that era.
Right, like 16 millimeter film of some kind.
Right, exactly, just like they would actually have during that time.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed this at all, but there was a scene where they actually showed the Germans, you know, like shooting from their machine gun nest, but they never showed their faces. I don't know if you noticed that too. It was basically this lifeless and sort of like faceless character up there, the Germans shooting all these people on the ground, which made it seem like, you know, this this really evil thing that they couldn't do anything against.
Yeah, I agree. In a way, I think that it almost made the guns themselves seem like a character. If you look at the Americans, you don't see any of them really shooting back. They don't even have a chance.
Yeah.
But the machine guns up in the nest are just a relentless, constant noise that you hear throughout the whole scene. And and that's really all you can make out clearly in those shots when it's up in the nest. Still the same sort of chaotic, shaky scenery, but
Right.
you do notice those guns and those bullet chains.
Right,
going
and
at the
that's
gun.
some excellent lighting there again too, to be able to see all the stuff on the ground, but just not be able to see those Germans in the machine gun nest, but be able to see their silhouette, so you can see their shape, but you're just not able to see detail on them. And
Yeah.
I think that was the idea of that scene.
Yeah.
Well, in our next segment, we'll check out a modern reboot of a classic franchise in Star Trek.
J.J. Abrams and Dan Mindel teamed up to bring us a visually stunning, fast-paced thrill ride that managed to keep the classic elements of story and character intact.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Dan.
And I'm Adam. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography, and then break them down to find out why exactly they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene that's a modern take on a classic franchise, Star Trek. Released in 2009, this film mixed classic film techniques with high-end visual effects to bring a sense of realism to the screen.
In this scene, the Enterprise crew has just been attacked by a Romulan ship.
Sir, there's another Federation ship!
Destroy it too.
Fire torpedoes!
Captain, they're locking torpedoes. Divert auxiliary power from port nacelles to forward shields. Zulu, status report.
Shields at 32%. The weapons are powerful, sir. We can't take another hit like that.
Give me Starfleet command.
Captain, the Romulan ship has lowered some kind of high-energy pulse device into the Vulcan atmosphere. Its signal appears to be blocking our communications and transporter abilities.
All power to forward shields. Prepare to fire all weapons.
Weapons ready.
Wait! The hull! Magnify!
Yes, sir.
Captain, we're being hailed.
Hello.
I'm Captain Christopher Pike. To whom am I speaking?
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
You've declared war against the Federation. Withdraw. I'll agree to arrange a conference with Romulan leadership at a neutral location.
I do not speak for the Empire. We stand apart.
Well, there was certainly a lot happening in that scene. So, Adam, what were some of the specific things you picked out?
Oh, certainly a lot of lens flares were happening in that
definitely.
scene.
Definitely.
You know, they actually used anamorphic lenses to make those lens flares appear the way that they did, the way they're kind
Right,
of
so they could
horizontal.
actually stretch.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's interesting the way that none of them looked the same. They were all made with real light.
Right.
They weren't made digitally. It was before any of that came about. As far as, before it became really popular, really this is the film that made it from a mistake into sort of a stylistic.
It's like an art
choice.
form now, yeah. Like they try to use different colors of lens flares. They try to use different sizes, different little dots like that. Some of them were more soft, some of them were more hard.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of different lens flares, but they, like you said, they're all unique.
Yeah, not one looked the same. Another thing they did was they actually, just off camera, had flashlights that they sort of shone in and out of the lens in order to make a sort of flashing, strobing effect, which that works really good too, especially during that battle scene.
Yeah, I noticed that especially on the captain shots. You could see a lot more of that happening. It almost got to be too much, but thankfully they would go from that to like the Romulan ship where you didn't basically see any lens flares at all.
No, quite the contrary. It was much more contrasty. The lighting was more stark, and the captain on that ship, you only saw half of his face at a time. It was
makes
quite,
him seem sinister, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Quite a contrast to the Enterprise, which is lit up like a Christmas tree.
Well, it's funny. You can actually see those lights on the actual Enterprise bridge. I mean, like they're there. You can see the lights that they use to actually light up the subjects, which is usually a faux pas. But in this case, because it's on the Enterprise, where you expect a lot of lights, it's okay to do.
Another thing I noticed was the camera shake. And it's said that J.J. Abrams was actually the only person who could get the camera shake just right. Yeah. So, say as the dolly was moving along, he'd actually grab onto the camera and just be doing this kind of thing.
So he had that kind of organic look when he shook it compared to other people.
It's much better than doing it in post or having some sort of machine do it. The way he did it himself, he was able to get it just right, the way that he wanted.
Of course, as the director, he can make it work just the way he wanted to, of course. And one of the other things that he did that you could tell throughout the film was that when he saw the Romulans at the end there, when everything had kind of calmed down a little bit, he actually stopped shaking the camera as much as he had before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was much more serene, much slower paced, longer shots, quite stark to the battle that happened just before that.
Well, we could talk all day about Star Trek, but Scotty's about to beam us up.
We hope you've enjoyed going on the cinematic journey with us from the 1940s all the way to 2009.
Thanks for watching.
We hope this series offered some insight on how great cinematographers craft their scenes to enhance the story. Using these techniques in your next project can help you take an ordinary scene and make it extraordinary. I'm Matt York. Until next time, keep making video.